Welcome to the 53rd meeting of the Civil Rights Council, formerly known as the Fair Employment and Housing Council. The meeting is being called to order. Rachel Langston, will you please do and conduct the roll call, please?
Chair Sandoval.
Present.
Chair Glader,
Present.
Chair Hong,
Present.
Chair Lude,
Present.
Chair Walensky.
Present.
And sorry, I don't think we got it for the mic, but Chair Sandoval.
Present.
Thank you.
Great. Thank you to those here in the State Building in Los Angeles for joining us for the Civil Rights Council meeting. I would also like to thank those who are attending remotely. The audio for this particular meeting is being webcast live via Zoom conference, and the audio of the meeting will also be available afterwards in the California Civil Rights Department website and the Civil Rights Department YouTube channel. We also have closed caption available for participants, which can be found at the bottom of the Zoom bar features. If you're having difficulty accessing closed captioning, you can email us at council@calcivilrights.ca.gov to resolve the issue. Members of the public who are joining remotely may have noticed that you are currently muted and your video is disabled at this time. However, please be advised that there will be opportunities for public comment and participation throughout today's meeting as we address each of our agenda items. We have a number of ways for you to provide input and comments. We kindly request that you limit your comments to 3 minutes. For those who are present, you can provide public comment when provided the opportunity to do so for each item on the agenda and at the conclusion of this meeting. You can also email the council at council@calcivilrights.ca.gov. We will be checking this email account throughout the meeting, and your comments will be read aloud and considered by the council members. If you'd like to speak directly rather than through your chat message, please raise your hand in the Zoom or press *9 if you called in. If you'd like to rename yourself in the Zoom list of participants, you can find yourself on the list and click rename in the list of options next to your name. Department staff members we would like to acknowledge at the outset, starting with this meeting, include Kevin Kish, the Civil Rights Department Executive Director, Adam Romero, the Civil Rights Department's Deputy Director of Executive Programs, Rachel Langston, Assistant Chief Counsel, as well as Mario Block, Senior Fair Employment and Housing Counsel. Thank you to all those attending. We will look forward to your participation throughout today's meeting. I'll now review the agenda. All the copies of the agenda and meeting materials can be accessed at the council's page of the Civil Rights Department's website, calcivilrights.ca.gov/Civil Rights Council. Highlights of today's meeting will include a welcome of our newest council member, Jonathan Glader, council member reports, a Civil Rights Department report from Kevin Kish. We'll also be taking action on consideration of unmodified text of proposed modifications to fair housing regulations, consideration of first modified text of proposed government code section 11135 regulations, updates from council members' subcommittees. But before we do that, I'd like to welcome Councilmember Jonathan Glader to the Civil Rights Council. We are all incredibly excited that you are joining us, given your commitment to civil rights and equity, not only in the higher education context, but also with regard to issues related to the rights of those in our community throughout the state of California. And so we welcome you, also a professor at UC Berkeley Law School. So I thank you for joining us, and we look forward to working with you, each and every one of us. And so this is an opportunity for you to introduce yourself to not only your fellow council members, but also members of the public. Welcome.
Thank you very much. It's an honor to be here. My name is Jonathan Glader. I'm on the faculty at the law school at the University of California, Berkeley. And indeed, one of my areas of scholarship is higher education finance, in particular with regard to student debt. I'm also the faculty director for the Center on Consumer Law and Economic Justice. So I'm very excited to join the endeavor of the council here, given the overlap in your concerns and mine. So thank you for the warm welcome.
Thank you. All right, our next order of business will be the approval of the minutes. We're looking at the minutes for not only our April 3rd, 2023 meeting, but also for our April 28th, 2023 meeting. So first of all, I'd like to see if there's any comments from our council members with regards to the April 3rd, 2023 meeting. Seeing none, do we have any public comments? Okay, can I get a motion to approve the minutes for the April 3rd, 2023 meeting?
So moved.
Second.
Roll call, please.
Chair Sandoval,
Aye.
Chair Glader,
I should abstain.
I'm sorry, Councilmember Glader, Councilmember Hong,
Aye.
Councilmember Alude,
Aye.
Councilmember Walensky.
Aye.
I believe Councilmember Helen Hong moved, and I think Councilmember Alude seconded.
I did.
Okay. Great. Now we're looking at the minutes from the April 28th, 2023 meeting. Do we have any comments or edits from our council members? Seeing none, move on to see if there's any public comments regarding this item. Okay, so can we get a motion, please?
So moved.
Second?
This is Councilmember Alude. I second.
Thank you, council member. Okay, roll call, please.
The motion was by Councilmember Hong. Chair Sandoval,
Aye.
Councilmember Glader,
Abstain.
Councilmember Hong,
Aye.
Councilmember Alude,
Aye.
Councilmember Walensky.
Aye.
Great, thank you. Next, we're moving on to the next order of business to see if there are any council member reports that they would like to provide at this time. Okay, seeing none, we'll move on to our Civil Rights Department report. I believe Executive Director Kevin Case will provide an update.
I'm happy to do that. I just want to confirm that my colleague hasn't already prepared something. No. Okay, great. I want to join Chair Sandoval in welcoming our newest council member, Professor Jonathan Glader. Welcome. We're delighted to have you. I encourage everyone to sign up for the department's newsletter, which provides a monthly or bi-monthly update of activities that we've been engaged in, including settlements, prosecutions, outreach events, and tools that we've developed to help Californians understand and comply with their civil rights and obligations. The biggest news from the past month is that we have launched our statewide education and outreach campaign in multiple languages to reach communities about California versus Hate Resource Line and Network, which is of course the first statewide hotline for individuals anywhere in California to report acts of hate. This includes, of course, hate crimes, but also bias-related incidents. You do not have to be a lawyer. You don't have to know if what happened to you was illegal or unlawful. We encourage you to report. Why? To understand better what is going on, but also to connect you to resources. So this is not a line where people call, report to the government, and never hear anything else. The line is designed to connect callers, if they choose, with care coordinators who will identify resources on the ground that can help them recover and move forward from bias-related incidents. That might include legal assistance, medical assistance, access to state programs like the Victims' Compensation Board, mental health resources, and other types of resources that can help people heal after experiencing an act of hate. So keep an eye out for those radio and online ads designed to reach communities across the state. We have a couple of settlements that we've announced recently in the past month. One is a fair housing settlement in a litigated matter involving severe anti-Black bias against a tenant in San Diego County. There is a press release up on our website that you can learn more about the department's work to enforce fair housing protections. And just today, we announced an important settlement in a matter involving allegations of a violation of the Fair Chance Act, which is the law protecting Californians with criminal histories and ensuring that they have a fair chance to access employment. That's a nearly $100,000 settlement involving the Moraga Orinda Fire Protection District. We salute the person who brought the complaint to us. We also salute the fire district for coming to the mediation table and making things right. And I will conclude by reiterating our department's commitment to enforcing the Fair Chance Act, which in my mind is a key California civil rights protection. Why? We incarcerate a ton of people. Nearly half of all California children have a parent with some kind of criminal history. Nearly 1 in 3 adults in California have a criminal history. Across the country, hundreds of thousands of people exit prison and jails each year and seek to reintegrate into their communities. 2, we make that criminal information history public. That is a policy choice. 3, there are serious racial disparities throughout the criminal legal system. And 4, it matters when people know about someone's criminal history. It tends to overwhelm everything else we know about that person, including a successful record of employment. So the Fair Chance Act is designed to remove these barriers to reintegration, which is a win for individuals, but also a win for us as a society. We're proud to enforce it and proud of the settlement that we announced today.
Thank you, Director Kish. Any comments from our council members? Okay, we're gonna move on to the next item, and that is consideration of unmodified text of proposed modifications to fair housing regulations, and I'll turn it over to Councilmember Helen Hong.
Good afternoon, everyone. Just to bring everyone to the same place. At our last meeting, it was the last 15-day comment period. And so what we have, that was in April. So since then, the council did not receive any further comments. And so we are now asking the council to approve the unmodified text and authorize the department to transmit transmit this to the Office of Administrative Law and to make non-substantial changes as may be needed. I also want to recognize that this has been the endeavor of staff Mariel Block, and so want to recognize and thank her for all of her work on this regulatory package.
Thank you, Councilmember Hong. Do we have any comments from council members? Any public comments? Great. So do we have a motion to authorize the department to submit the unmodified text to the Office of Administrative Law and for the Civil Rights Department to make any non-substantial changes required by the Office of Administrative Law?
This is Councilmember Walensky. I so move.
Thank you, Councilmember. A second?
Second.
Great. Roll call, please.
That's Councilmember Alude who seconded. Chair Sandoval,
Aye.
Councilmember Glader,
Aye.
Councilmember Hong,
Aye.
Councilmember Alude,
Aye.
Councilmember Walensky.
Aye.
Thank you, everyone. We're moving on to the next agenda item. It's consideration of first modified text of proposed government code section 11135. Turning it over to Councilmember Alude and Councilmember Walensky.
Good afternoon, everyone. Councilmember Walensky and I are introducing modifications to the proposed Government Code Section 11135 regulations with the request that the council approve the modifications and move this version of the proposed regulations into a 15-day public comment period. We want to first thank the tremendous work of former council members Dale Brodsky and Dara Scher, who worked for years on preliminary activities to put forward a comprehensive revision of these regulations and who developed the proposed regulations approved for rulemaking. I also want to thank my fellow subcommittee member, Councilmember Walensky, and Civil Rights Department staff, Rachel Langston, Mariel Block, and Adam Romero, and Director Kevin Kish for their important contributions in developing these proposed regulations. Second, I'd like to provide an explanation of what stage we're in the rulemaking process. The regulatory package was submitted to OAL in February of this year. The proposed regulation was published and notice for public hearing issued. A 45-day comment period was noticed, in which we received comments in writing as well as at the public hearing that was held on April 3rd. If the council approves the modified text of the proposed regulations today, the next step would be a 15-day public comment period. And when the rulemaking process is complete, a summary and response to all comments will be provided in the final statement of reasons. Lastly, and in the interest of time, we're not going to walk through all of the proposed changes, but did want to offer that our overall approach was to review and consider comments from the public and other council members, and to make modifications that provide more clarity to the regulations. We refined the proposed text, making a number of technical changes, such as formatting and reorganization and typographical changes, as well as some substantive changes. The revisions affect several definitions in Article 1 and specific sections of Articles 3, 4, 7, and 10 through 12. Councilmember Walensky, do you have anything to add before we begin taking comments?
Thank you. Good afternoon. This is Councilmember Walensky. I would just add that we welcome comments from members of the public today, but because we are not yet in a formal comment period, we would add that if you're a member of the public and you want your comment to be included in the formal rulemaking for this package, please resubmit your comment during the upcoming 15-day comment period to make sure that it is included in that package. Thanks.
Thank you, council members. Do we have any comments from any of our other council members? Councilmember Hong?
So I think there is just one word missing on page 23. You added the preposition to, and I think you also needed the word receive. That was from the original text.
So that's concerning, this is Councilmember Lude, concerning section 14026A4, is that correct?
That's correct. So I think it's just missing the word receive. When you added the to, the original text had receive in there as well.
Thank you.
And just for my own clarification, I wasn't sure if this was a term of art in the same section when in section A3, when the bar is providing a program or activity to a person that is not as effective. How is effectiveness measured? Because a lot of programs do not have any data behind them. I wasn't sure if that's just a term of art that's understood in the field. Because that's also stated in section 4. And that can just be for consideration. No response is needed. That was just my one question, my one kind of comment. But that was it. Thank you. This was super helpful and very thorough. So I really want to recognize the work of the council members and the staff for this comprehensive package.
Thank you, Councilman Hong. Any other comments? Do you have any public comments? Okay. Very sure. Great.
Good afternoon, council members. I'm calling in, this is Dara Scher. I'm calling in my individual capacity this time and not as a staff member of Disability Rights California. And I wanted to thank the council very much first for the moving the fair housing regulation package forward. Very happy to see that moving, but also for your work on this package, which I think was very thoughtful, and you caught a number of things that I think were really helpful. I have a comment and a couple of areas of concern that I just flagged for you, and I will submit comments again later. I know that DRC did submit some written comments today, and I'll make sure they're resubmitted as well. In response to the last question, couldn't quite tell on audio who asked it about if as effective as other programs. That is language that is parallel to language in a number of federal regulations under the ADA and 504. And it is a standard phrasing. So a term of art in terms of evaluating effective, ensuring that a person with disabilities can participate in as effective a way as anybody else could. It's designed to just be a comparison to people without disabilities, to just respond to that comment. I did want to flag a couple of definitional changes that I don't quite understand. The first one is in the definition of disability, 14020, P as in Paul, 4C, the definition of physical disability. And the word diagnosis is proposed to be removed, and I'm not sure why. Diagnosis is a part of a medical condition. It is also used in a great number of case laws. It is certainly, having a diagnosis is different than having a record of or a history of. This comes up a lot in disability cases where someone learns that someone has a diagnosis of cancer or a diagnosis of HIV or a diagnosis of COVID, and that alone, with no knowledge of medical history, with no knowledge of any medical records, creates discriminatory conduct. And I would urge the council to restore that word and not strike it. Similarly, on pages 10 and 11 of the regulations, under the definitions of disability, particularly under the definition of physical disability, the council proposes to, let me back up a second. Furthermore, 11135C requires the definitions mirror 12926, or they can exceed them, but they have to be similar. And 12926 also includes a diagnosis in the definition of medical condition. So there's good reasons to leave it in that definition. And it's also a little confusing because the council didn't propose to delete that word in the parallel provision under mental disability. So I don't see any reason to delete it. I think it provides additional important clarity. The second comment I want to make is that the proposal proposes to delete perceived as having an impairment in subsection P6. And I am particularly troubled by that because that language actually comes straight from 11135 D, which uses the term perceived as and indicates it's a protected class, so that it's included in the protected class as people who are perceived as having disabilities. And it's a term that's used in other places in the regulations and is also included in the FEHA regulations and the FEHA statute. So I'm not sure why perceived as having an impairment was deleted. And I'm particularly not sure why the 3 subsections under it were deleted, because they are all important provisions, reasonable interpretations of perceived as that come from case law and a history of working with people with disabilities. If by chance people deleted this because they thought it was duplicative of regarded as, I think it is somewhat different. It is used differently. It is specifically in the statute. I think one possibility would be to change received at to say something like received, perceived, or I can't remember the rest of the term there, and then include the subsections if you want to lump it with regarded as. But it also stands fine on its own. And like I said, it has a strong statutory base in 11135D, and it's also used in numerous places, other places in the regulations and the statutes and in FEHA. So I am not sure. It's also used in definition double F, F as in Frank, perceived membership in a protected class, and associated people. It's also used in 14070F, perceived harassment or perceived association. So I do think it's a very important definition to retain. The last one that I want to speak to quickly is the deletion of the definition of translator. I'm not sure why this was deleted. There is a definition of interpreter. It may be that there was some confusion about alternative communication services. I'm looking at definitions 14100F, and then also subsection B. So alternative communication services actually refers to translation services. And so you do need a definition of translation, but I would also recommend a related change. I would recommend restoring it, and I would recommend a related change, which is in subsection B, alternative communication services. The second sentence says, alternative communication services include, but are not limited to, the provision of the services of a multilingual employee or a qualified interpreter for the benefit of, and it goes on. I think if you modified that sentence to say services of a multilingual employee or a qualified interpreter or a qualified translator, you would then have consistency within the paragraph talking about interpretation and translation services, and you could comfortably restore the definition. This is really important because interpretations refer to written translations, interpretations refer to oral interpreting, and translations refer to written translations, and you need to cover both of them in this section. So I just wanted to bring that I'm sure that the council members had some reasons for making these changes, but I would encourage you not to make those particular changes. I think they create some confusion in light of the case law and how these statutes are interpreted in relationship to the ADA and 504 generally.
Thank you, Derek.
I'd like to make one more quick comment, which is I would encourage the council to consider other extensive comments submitted by advocates, if not in this round. I understand that, but certainly in the future. Thank you very much for your work, everybody.
Thank you very much. Any other comments, public comments?
Thank you.
I'm sorry, we do have one by email.
Okay,
Disability Rights California did submit a letter of comment, which I will circulate. However, please note that there is currently no comment period open at this time. There will be, assuming the council approves this first modified text, there will be a 15-day comment period open shortly, and you can join our listserv to ensure that you receive notice of that. But to the extent that you've submitted a comment right now, you will need to resubmit it during the 15-day comment period in order for it to be considered as part of the record. And my apologies, this is Rachel Langston. Thanks so much.
thank you, Rachel. It looks like we do have another public comment. Go ahead.
Hi, this is Joanne Lee with the Legal Aid Foundation of Los Angeles. I was part of the group of advocates who submitted the large set of comments in the past round. And I just wanted to, first of all, thank the council for all its work, but also express our deep disappointment that these revised regs are not aligned in the context of language rights and how this area has evolved over the past several years. I know that we all know the importance of language access and language justice in our communities. We saw that especially highlighted during the pandemic. We saw denial and lack of interpreters in many different areas. We saw an increased reliance on machine translation, which proved to be very, very dangerous. And we saw a lot of barriers to digital doors as we saw many operations move to an online format. And we actually have seen a very positive response in other contexts from government officials and entities who've taken positive steps to promote language justice and really clarify what it means to provide meaningful language access in a comprehensive manner. We've seen that in the federal government with the president's equity executive order, which included language access. Other directives, the revamping and modernizing of language access plans across many federal agencies. We've seen Governor Newsom with his equity order address language access. We've also seen statutes in specific areas address more comprehensive and expansive language access. And even locally where I am in Los Angeles, we've seen the city and the county both move to strengthening and enhancing language access in a very holistic way. So through this process of amending the 11135 regs, we felt that there was great potential to really demonstrate that California was a leader in civil rights and especially around language rights. Given the enormous diversity in our state, we should be a leader in this realm and we should celebrate the vast language abilities of our communities. But instead of aligning these regulations to what is happening in the government federally and the county and some of the cities, the way that the regulations are, they further contribute to the confusion of an already murky patchwork of substandard language access directives. And it's especially unfortunate because our community members do not differentiate between city services, county services, state services, and federal services. And so all of these benefits, programs, and services are critical, and they should have the same high level of protection and standards, and they should apply to all of our linguistically diverse communities because they do deserve to access all of these programs and services with dignity and respect. So I really hope that you will consider reviewing our comments and enhancing the regulations to be aligned with the things that we've laid out. Thank you.
Thank you for your comment. We have one additional public comment. Okay, go ahead.
Hi, this is Kel O'Hara from Equal Rights Advocates. I was also part of that advocacy coalition letter that was submitted in the last round of comments. And similarly would like to state both my appreciation for the council's work on this and also our disappointment to not see more changes to the sections on and definitions on sex and gender. Our comment had highlighted sort of the dangers of those definitions, the lack of plain text definitions, and the ways that that ties into some pretty dangerous anti-trans rhetoric that we're seeing and lack of clarity around that. I won't spend too much time rehashing it, but I will say that this issue is more prevalent than ever and more important than ever. It was just announced that the Attorney General has filed a lawsuit against the Chino Valley School District for their forced outing policy against trans students. This is something that is very real and is very much happening in California. And so having regulations that are keeping up with the needs of trans folks in this state and queer folks in this state to protect them from discrimination is vitally important. And we will submit further questions on that or further comments on that point during the comment period. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Any comments?
This is Councilmember Walensky. Thank you to everyone for those comments. Councilmember Alude and I would like to request that we take a quick break so that we can confer briefly among the subcommittee.
Okay. Sure, we'll take a break. How much do you need, Councilmember?
10 minutes.
10 minutes? Great. It's currently 2:35. We'll be back at 2:45 p.m. We're taking a break, and thank you. Okay. We're back on the record. It's currently 2:46 PM. It's come to my understanding that the Zoom link was not functional for a portion of our meeting, so I'd like to see if there's any public comments with regard to our regulatory packages. So if there's any public comment first related to the unmodified text of proposed modifications to fair housing regulations, please identify yourself if you want to make a comment with regard to that particular regulatory package. Do we have any public comments?
We had a hand raised and taken away, but we have given Ashley the ability to speak.
Hi, I raised my hand too quickly because my comment is on the 11135 regulations, but thank you.
Thank you. That's coming up next. So get ready to raise your hand again, okay? All right. Any other public comments you see for fair housing? Okay. We're moving on to 11135 regulatory package. Any public comments? Go ahead. And who is that?
Hi, this is Ashley Warner with Leadership Council for Justice and Accountability. And thank you so much for opening up public comment again. I'm a directing attorney with Leadership Council for Justice and Accountability based in Fresno. And I just wanted to thank the council for all of your work over the last few years to develop these regulations. I mentioned some of this last time when I commented in the spring when these were before you. But just briefly, our organization works directly alongside residents of low-income communities of color in the San Joaquin and East Coachella Valley. The communities we work with are impacted by a really wide range of historic and severe disparities that in many ways undermine residents' quality of life, their access to opportunity, their life expectancies and health outcomes based on race, country of origin, immigration status, and other protected characteristics. So these regulations are really important to us. They're really important to the communities we work with. In many ways, we think they're very strong. We think they're going to play an invaluable role in making effective enforcement of 11135 possible and help reverse longstanding inequities that have impacted the communities. I did just in particular want to join today to just raise some concerns that we did join a coalition of organizations in submitting comments. And Leadership Council's contributions to the comments were really particularly focused on ensuring that the environmental justice issues that we see that impact communities we work with in the San Joaquin Valley are really encompassed by the rules, the regulations, and fall within their purview. And so we provided some suggestions in particular relating to Article 3 prohibited practices, Section 14026. And in particular under subsection A9 and subsection A10, and also signed on to the comments in their entirety. We really believe everything in those comments is really on point and important. But just some of our recommendations in that section had to do with ensuring both that the regulations are clearly and explicitly encompassing not just issues with denial of benefits based on protected characteristics, but also ensuring that programs and activities are not adversely impacting protected classes in unlawful ways, that is also clearly covered by the regulations. And that's a really critical component to ensure that the regulations are fully encompassing environmental justice issues. And just to provide one example, when a jurisdiction is targeting communities of color kind of uniquely for concentrating industrial uses in those communities, which we see happen pretty frequently, that program or activity tends to disproportionately impact communities of color, their environmental health, their access to quality housing. So just wanted to flag that we saw no substantive changes in response to our comments, which were lengthy. We think the regulations as they are very strong, but there's also really important areas for improvement. So we would really strongly encourage the council to go back and take a look at those and consider including them. So thank you so much.
Thank you for your public comment. Any other public comments? No further public comment. Okay. So I believe we have a motion. Do you have to add? Okay. Ms. Cooley, go ahead.
Yes, I would like to know what the department is doing to ensure that people with disabilities have more access to affordable housing that's not only affordable, but also accessible.
Thank you, Ms. Cooley. Okay. Councilmember Walensky, did you have further comments or statements?
This is Councilmember Walensky. Thank you to all for your comments. Councilmember Olude and I are not proposing to make further changes at this time and move to have the council adopt this version and put it to a 15-day comment period.
Okay, do we have a motion on that?
So moved. Oh, this is Councilmember Hong.
This is Gabriel Sandoval, second.
Chair Sandoval,
Aye.
Councilmember Glader,
Aye.
Councilmember Hong,
Aye.
Councilmember Alude,
Aye.
Councilmember Walensky.
Aye.
Great. Thank you, everyone. Next item on the agenda, we have the consideration of draft council handbook. I'll turn it over to my colleague, Councilmember Helen Hong.
This is Councilmember Hong. So this handbook was an evolution and product of our first strategic planning subcommittee meeting, which we received a copy of the California Commission on Hate's handbook. And upon reviewing it, we thought this would be a great opportunity to create a handbook for the council members because of two main reasons. One, I think the majority of us have just started, I want to say within the last 2 or 3 years. The other aspect is the council has evolved from its first iteration about 10 years ago. And I found myself feeling, one, I think it takes a lot of staff time to answer the same questions from council members over and over again. Two, I think that it helps kind of provide a just basic understanding of what our roles and responsibilities are without having to, one, think about bothering because we only meet every so many months. And then the other aspect was really kind of saying, look, where are we? Who are we? What are our terms? What do we want to have in our tenure? And what is our responsibility as we move through and volunteer our service and time with this really important body? So with that, we used, quite frankly, most of the council, the Commission on Hate's handbook, but we adjusted based on our statutory authority, along with unique items as a regulatory body. And it was just an opportunity to say, hey, when someone is getting onboarded, that this is really a guide to help you just understand this body and what is it that we want to kind of move towards as a council together. So that was the evolution. We created a draft. We got input, obviously, from Adam and Kevin, and it not only covers the administrative, but what the roles are themselves. In terms of an overview, it's an overview of the Civil Rights Department, the statutory authority of the council, all the council member in terms, the onboarding and training, required trainings and orientation, really reviewing the meeting procedures, specifically the Bagley-Keene Open Meeting Act, quorum and voting. Also reviewing the responsibilities of the chair, the roles of the subcommittees, and understanding our roles and responsibilities of representing the council in public, including general rules of conduct, and guidelines when communicating with other organizations, individuals, and the media, and specifically reviewing any conflicts of interest, especially when rulemaking is in progress. So with that, that's the presentation.
Thanks, Councilmember. Any comments from fellow council members?
This is Councilmember Glader. I can say that as a newcomer to the council, I found the handbook draft incredibly helpful. However, because I'm new, I don't quite feel qualified to assess. But I expect to know shortly how helpful it will prove to be.
Thank you, Councilmember. Any other council members? Councilmember Wilkinson?
This is Councilmember Walensky. Thank you to thank you to Chair Sandoval and Councilmember Hong and the department for drafting this. I really very much appreciate it. I find it very helpful, and I have no substantive comments or concerns.
Thank you. Any comments?
This is Councilmember Lude. I just wanted to say the same. Thank you for putting it together. I think it's a helpful resource. Appreciate your work.
Great. Thank you, everyone. Councilmember. So looks like there's some action to be taken with this.
Oh, so that I would ask for the council to adopt it as our handbook and that it can be adjusted as necessary. But I think for a draft, I think this would be something that we would want to make sure is issued to all new council members moving forward.
I would recommend that the vote permit the department to make non-substantive changes to the handbook, and then for substantive changes, it would come back to the body for approval.
That friendly amendments
Yes,
accepted.
friendly amendments accepted.
Okay, with that, now do we get a motion? for that?
As Councilmember Glader so moved.
Great. Second?
Councilmember Lude, second.
Great. Roll call, please.
Chair Sandoval,
Aye.
Councilmember Glader,
Aye.
Councilmember Hong,
Aye.
Councilmember Alude,
Aye.
Councilmember Walensky.
Aye.
Great. So the next item on the agenda is related to strategic planning subcommittee. As Councilmember Hung mentioned, we met with leadership at the department in latter part of June, and the idea was to focus on what additional opportunities exist for the council. And we met with Kevin Kish and Adam Romero, and the general overview is, what is the responsibilities of the council members and the like. And so we have our objective number one that we came out with is there's our regulatory responsibilities, and that's to adopt, promulgate, and amend or rescind rules, regulations, or guidelines with council jurisdiction, and then prioritize those regulatory packages based on staff and stakeholder input, as well as any kind of annual legislative changes that may impact what we do in that regard. But we also know there's a second component, that's education and awareness, and that is increasing public knowledge and understanding of civil rights issues through semi-annual hearings and or reports, and leveraging the capacity of staff and council members, including possibly publishing reports highlighting significant civil rights developments and providing recommendations with regard to needs that we see either in particular areas or particular regions and the like. And we find this in the authority that we've already been given. So the idea is that we have already our regulatory responsibility under section 1110033, but we also have these other powers and duties, which are specifically now reading from the regulations, is to make inquiries into general discrimination problems and issue informal and formal findings, including published reports, establish such advisory agencies and councils as will assist in fostering goodwill, cooperation, and conciliation among groups and elements of the population of the state, through studies, conciliation, hearings, and recommendations to the council, and then hold hearings, issue publications, results of inquiries and research, and reports to the governor and the legislature that in its judgment will tend to aid in effectuating the purpose of the Fair Employment and Housing Act, promote goodwill, cooperation, and conciliation, and minimize or eliminate unlawful discrimination or advance civil rights in the state of California. So those are all our additional responsibilities, and we have focused a lot on regulatory packages. We have started to hold civil rights hearings and also work in ways that also allowed us to move forward with certain regulatory packages. For example, regulatory packages dealing specifically with the Fair Chance Act and related matters. But there are real opportunities here, and part of our discussion was how can we as council members continue to contribute both not only in the regulatory way, but also to work on other avenues that are provided for us specifically under the regulations, community education, community outreach, and the like. So I really think this is an opportunity to get feedback from council members now with regard to the general view that each council member moving forward will be assigned or appointed to serve on a regulatory package, but also on something that fixes or addresses the idea of having more community engagement and community interaction at the council member level. We already know that the Civil Rights Department is doing a lot of work on that end, but we ourselves also have that function and responsibility if we so choose to endeavor in that way. So I'd like feedback from Councilmember Helen Hong.
Yeah, I think I would, this is Councilmember Hong. I think the only thing that I would add is that just to really be cognizant that we all have other full-time jobs and we really care about civil rights in California. But really that a regulatory package is very intense, that requires a lot of staffing from the department who are the real experts in this, along with the experts in the field. And so to really be thoughtful about how we can be on one regulatory package, understanding that it can take quite a long time. And in the interim, looking at issues that are up and coming and seeing how our council can act as kind of on a big picture level while the department is doing the day-to-day items. And I really want to recognize that Councilmember Sandoval and Dale really started this with the Council on Hate, I'm sorry, the State of Hate hearing. Subcommittee, and that evolved into the Commission on Hate, and then the department's work on getting an AI subcommittee hearing, which then eventually evolved into the promulgation of updating the rules on AI. But really seeing how we can look at upcoming issues as well as other data points that we can also use to educate the legislature or others on issues that are really impacting that may not be on the radar yet for other states or other communities as well. So that would be my only 2 cents. And so we really wanted to have an idea of what do the other council members feel? Because I know when we interviewed, it was kind of, it's a lot of promulgation of rules, but there's all these other opportunities to really see how other council members felt about this and what they were hoping to get out of their service as well. So I think that's really important.
Thank you, Councilmember. Any councilmember would like to address this item?
This is Councilmember Alude. I agree with you that all of those things are sort of priorities, they're interests of all of us. They're things that we'd like to sort of see more and continue to do. I do think that when some of our council members stepped down recently, we had to step back from regulatory work that we were very invested in and wanted to be moving forward. I think sort of particularly of the Associational Disabilities Subcommittee that we've sort of paused the work of. And so for me, I sort of don't quite know how to juggle that sort of interest in doing more of the work that this sort of new work, or more so than we've done in the past, and really reviving some of the subcommittee work that we had to table because we just don't have as many council members right now.
Councilmember Walensky, do you have anything to add on your thought on the work?
This is Councilmember Walensky. Thanks, Chair Sandoval and Councilmember Hong for having this discussion. I think that I'm certainly interested in doing more hearings or other outreach activities, but I also would want to make sure that we're complementing the department's existing efforts and not either duplicating or creating more work for the department. And so I would want to make sure that we're aligned in terms of what the needs are and how we can best try to meet those needs. So I think I would just want to make sure that we're complementing and not creating more work for or duplicating the department's efforts. I also think I very much have enjoyed gotten a lot out of the hearings that the council has held. And I think that some of those hearings have also led to rulemaking activities. And so I think that if the council is considering putting on a hearing on a particular topic, that that there also be some sort of follow-up outcome from that, either the initiation of rulemaking or kind of other next step in the work that would come out of that hearing. So, and that way the knowledge shared in those hearings can be put to use for future projects. So thank you.
So you're thinking either the need to have a new regulatory package based on information we might gather from a hearing, or some type of guidance that could be disseminated, or some other type of material or educational.
Correct. I'm thinking just that there be some sort of follow-up to hearings, so that that then we can act on what we're learning at the hearing.
And that could also just be a documentation memoranda of here's what people said, here are some of the main issues. How that's used, we could determine, but just also something like that, even though we may have a video of it, but like synthesize it in a way that is aligned with what the department is doing, or identify potential resources.
Agreed.
Councilmember?
This is Councilmember Glader. There are, I guess, two things I'm hearing. One of them is the engagement with the public through reports, memoranda, something like that, that would ideally complement the regulatory process. So it would be a way of recording what we've gathered through hearings or whatever research we've done to explain the regulatory approach ultimately taken. The second piece, and I'm curious to understand this better, is the role of I think you said something about individual council members engaging with the public, and I'm not sure I understand the contours of that, and I'm sure that's just because I'm new.
Sure. So when I made mention of that, I meant in the context of Civil Rights Department has a responsibility and has already moved forward in educating the public and in different ways, or either through webinars or through other types of guidance issues and those kind of press releases identifying their lawsuits that have been successful in terms of settlements, whatever the case may be. So the department itself has that responsibility, but as council members collectively, we also have that responsibility of community engagement. That's what I meant in that way. But in addition to that, individually, depending on which committee you sit on, we also, I believe, can meet with leaders in different sectors, different constituents, whether it's business or civil rights or whatever the case may be, to get a better understanding of what are some of the issues that they believe are important with regards to civil rights compliance. And we can use that as an information to bring back, and we also can invite, I think, in the benefit of the council and the department, individuals to present to us about here are some issues we're seeing, maybe in this region, maybe in this sector, maybe with regard to the civil rights law. So that's how I see it, how we individually can also be involved.
This is Councilmember Glader. Thank you. Thank you very much. That clarifies. It sounds like an individual fact-finding efforts that each of us could engage in to inform regulatory or reporting.
And bring it
going
back
forward.
Absolutely, we can work as a body together, see if that's something we would like to consider in this kind of forum. And so that's what I was identifying as well.
Got it. Then I would echo Councilmember Walensky's concerns about not duplicating, but it sounds like it sounds very much consistent with the reasons we're here.
Okay.
This is Councilmember Hong, and I want to reiterate that all this would be in conjunction with leadership of the department, and that this would all be aligned, that none of this would be going off. It would be input from leadership on the staff and obviously from stakeholders themselves in terms of what are key issues that we may be able to highlight as a Civil Rights Council. And to also note that clearly the regulatory priority exists, but that we also have to just be mindful. Before we had 11 subcommittees, and that is just an enormous amount of staffing in terms of, I think, responsibilities. I just want to be realistic on what the department and the council can do, considering that we still have 2 vacancies there's limited resources. And so to keep up the momentum in terms of what we can do as individually, what kind of resources we can bring in terms of guests or reporting or what have you, I think that's what Chair Sandoval and I were just thinking in terms of how do we keep the momentum without necessarily having to add more burden on the staff at times in terms of certain regulatory packages. But I think the goal is always advancing civil rights in alignment with the department in the areas that we have authority to do with our statutory charge.
Agreed. Any additional comments or statements? And we can always revisit these issues, right? So as we get new council members, and I hear what everyone is saying, we want to be aligned with the department, of course. We also want to ensure that those items that we thought were important and prioritized continue to be on top of mind once we get new council members in, right? Related to the regulatory packages that have been put on pause, but not stopped. And so that's why we welcome, of course, the addition of council member later, so and others hopefully in the future. But also what I'm hearing is that we are open to having these types of community convenings, whether it's hearings or some other way, with the focus of having this serve not only one objective, but multiple objectives, right? Getting information from the community, learning what's happening in a particular area or the like, and then use that as a possibility to inform maybe a new regulatory package or some other type of action by the department and or council. Is that right? Okay. Great. So we'll take that back, and I think we'll move forward on it, and we'll have more discussion with the next agenda item related to subcommittee updates. But anybody else want to add anything?
Oh, this is Council Member Walensky. I'm just adding for the audio that there's a lot of head nodding up here with what was said, and just I think it sounds like we are all on the same page in terms of the alignment and the goals.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Great. So we'll move on to the next subcommittee updates.
Chair Sandoval,
Yes.
apologies. I don't know if there's public comment over there, but I'm not.
Do you have any public comments on this? Sorry.
Okay.
Sorry, but
None
thank you so
here.
much.
Thank you. Sorry to interrupt.
Okay, so we have subcommittee updates. And as I understand it, we had consolidated some subcommittees, but we also know there's some openings on some subcommittees, including AI. I believe Councilmember Helen Hong is on that subcommittee. And so there is an opportunity, if you would like to serve on that, Councilmember Glader.
This is Councilmember Alude. I actually wonder if we could sort of review the
Sure.
subcommittees that we have, and particularly the ones that
Yes.
only have one member, if there's more than just the artificial intelligence one.
Right, as what I remember from the last convening is that we have religious creed discrimination that's put on pause. I think Councilmember Walensky's on that, and she is by herself. We have the AI
So,
subcommittee.
If I may summarize. from
You
the
may
minutes.
summarize for the
Okay.
minutes.
This is Councilmember Hong, just reviewing the minutes in terms of what subcommittees exist at this point and who is on which committee. So council members Alude and Walensky are on Government Code Section 11135 Regulatory Subcommittee. The Criminal History and Employment Regulation Subcommittee is comprised of Chair Sandoval and Councilmember Walensky.
But that no longer is in existence.
Oh, so now that is done.
Just to clarify, this is Kevin Kish, OAL approved the criminal history regulations, and that subcommittee has concluded its work.
Thank you.
Congratulations. Yes, we should have congratulated the subcommittee.
You're welcome.
It evolved out of existence.
Yes.
The council combined the Hate, Violence, and Community Education Subcommittee with Chair Sandoval and myself, Councilmember Hong. The Algorithms and Bias Subcommittee is only Councilmember Hong. And then the council paused the work of the UNRU Act Subcommittee, the Reasonable Accommodation for Social Disability Subcommittee, the Religious Creed Discrimination and Accommodation Subcommittee, until after council members are appointed and onboarded.
Right.
And this is Kevin Kish again. I just want to flag one of the ongoing sources of work for this body is annual changes made to the laws within the council's jurisdiction by the legislature. And so we can anticipate potentially changes that will happen in this legislative session. We will know within 2 months which bills have been signed by the governor, passed by the legislature and signed by the governor. That will require the formation, assuming that some are, that could require the formation of a subcommittee to implement legislative changes into existing regulations in the new year.
Thank you, Director Kish. So the discussion is,
Oh, and I'm sorry, and then the strategic planning subcommittee with Chair Sandoval and Councilmember Hong.
right,
But in light of the strategic plan, I think, and I think referencing Councilmember Alude, it may be a good time to reflect on roles that people want to take on, because now we only have 1, 2, 3, 4 subcommittees at this point that are live.
so I guess why don't we identify those subcommittees that have one individual at this
Yes.
time, and that I think was the AI as well as religious discrimination. And so I guess the question is for you, Councilmember Glader, as to which or maybe both you would like to participate in, or we can also wait until the next, depending on whether it's going to be the council member or members joining us. So
May I jump in? Chair
Sure.
Sandoval, this is Councilmember Walensky. My understanding is there's 3 subcommittees where there's only 1 council member. Currently, it's the AI, it's the
Right.
reasonable accommodations for associational disabilities
Correct.
and religious creed discrimination.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
And the Councilmember Alude, are we fair housing regulations? Are we not moving forward to find a second member for that because of what our vote today?
Yes, I don't think it's needed at this point, and it is primarily staff driven, so I would happily take the credit of staff member Mariel Block. Mariel is the.
So this is Councilmember Glader. I will go out on a limb. I'm definitely interested in exploring the work of the AI subcommittee dealing with, in particular, algorithmic discrimination. So,
Great.
yeah.
any other comments at this time? Okay. There was also some discussion that about the creation of another subcommittee, and maybe it could be housed under the Community Education Outreach Committee, about looking into and exploring doing a joint hearing with the State on Hate Commission, or identifying some other hearing either the latter part of this year or early next year. Do you think we need to have a different subcommittee on that, or could that come out of the Community Education Outreach Subcommittee?
I think it can come out of that. I would just would want to make sure that the other council members are feel comfortable with that, or if there are other ideas in terms of participation or engagement.
This is Councilmember Alude. I would support it being tied in with the work of the Community Education Subcommittee.
Okay.
Councilmember Walensky, same.
Councilmember Glader, same.
Okay, great. Okay, all right. Any further discussion on this item? So why don't we just, go ahead.
I'm sorry, just before we move on, this is Councilmember Hong. So at this point, we're pausing on the other 3. I would ask staff, should we try staffing the other 3 or hold off to see what happens in terms of any legislative action that may happen? Should we try reviving any of the paused subcommittees, or should we wait until to find out if the department gets any bills from the legislature to see if we need to create something else later on? just in terms of sequencing, because I want to maximize what we have today, but I also don't want to encourage Professor Glader to be on a bunch of committees when there might be creation of more in the next meeting. So I just want to just ask staff in terms of what they're
That seems
thinking.
like the right path to take.
Pause. Okay, okay. So then in that case, I would move to add Councilmember Glader to the AI subcommittee for the record.
Second. All right, roll call, please.
Sandoval,
Aye.
Councilmember Glader,
Aye.
Councilmember Hong,
Aye.
Councilmember Alude,
Aye.
Councilmember Walensky.
Aye.
Do we need to take action with regard to us exploring a hearing with our committee or no? Okay, great. All right, do we have any additional public comments on it? Any items?
There's a general public comment.
Okay.
Although the individual specified it was a personal question and not to be read.
Okay.
But so if that individual would like me to read it, if they could advise us of that ASAP. Otherwise, I don't believe there are any further public comments.
Okay. So we don't hear anything. It looks like the person requested specifically not to have it made public, so we're gonna honor that person's request.
All right,
Okay,
thank you.
thank you so much. All right, so having no other items, this comes to an end, our council meeting. And we are adjourning at 3:23 PM. Thank you, everyone. Thank you all the stakeholders for your comment. Also wanted to thank council members as well, and as well as the leadership, of the Civil Rights Department, Rachel, and everyone, Adam and Kevin and Mariel. Thank you so much. Great.
We're adjourned.